Subscribe to Simply Bitcoin.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Meme Factory podcast. This is test stream number 27. We will never have a real stream, only tests until we get this right. This evening, we've got Erik Cason with us. Erik, could you introduce yourself? Let everybody know who you are.
Hello, my name's Erik Cason, and I'm a Bitcoiner. I have a website called Crypto Sovereignty, which don't let the title mislead you, which is pretty much all about Bitcoin and how Bitcoin enables you to have personal sovereignty for yourself. I'm more interested in the philosophical aspects, so unless you don't like reading, you probably shouldn't visit my website. But anyways, lots of really great philosophical content there if you're interested in it. Yeah, and otherwise I just kind of drift around and promote Bitcoin because it's the only hard asset that isn't going to get absolutely hammer fucked out of you. So you should have Bitcoin, and if you don't, you're in trouble.
Awesome. Greg, we cannot hear you.
There we go. What I got out of that was that you're a drifter. Is that right? Okay.
A drifter? Yeah. That's exactly it.
Excellent. So I know you haven't seen the show before. Maybe you've seen one or two episodes. Part of how we are able to fund this endeavor is that our sponsors require us to have the guests read the ad copy. So this evening, if you'll check your DMs, Erik, I've sent you the ad copy for tonight. If you could, at your convenience, go ahead and read that.
I'm excited to show this to y'all. Hi, my name's Erik Cason, and people don't read. This episode of the Meme Factory podcast is brought to you by the hardworking men and women at the Social Contract LLC and their famous product, violence. Does it upset you that somebody else has bodily autonomy? Want to do what you like to with them without them having any say about it? Do you have neighbors that won't get off your lawn? Does your boss drive a nicer car than you? Well, the Social Contract LLC has been using this one nifty trick. Sovereign individuals hate it. It's called violence. Arm yourself with a bigger stick than the guy over there and go project your power all up in his face. With violence, you can cut through all of the red tape and silence your dissenters permanently. The best part about violence is it's a zero-sum game. The more violence you use, the better your life becomes. Use violence on one person, you might go to jail. But use violence on billions of people, and now you can collect money from them and call it protection. Remember, violence is not the answer, it's the question. Violence? The answer is a resounding yes.
Hey, well done, Erik.
Meanwhile, Son has like the face of like, how I'm gonna edit this for the ad. Like last time the guy like edited what was the ad?
It was for Desiree Dickerson's, right?
Desiree about
even upload it.
Suicide and Epstein. Like, yeah.
Now we're gonna get banned on this episode.
We tried everything. Twitter.
We'll fix it in post.
Tweeted. Yeah, it couldn't be tweeted.
No, not at all.
It was a pain. All right.
So, I'm excited to see what the product pitch looks like at the end.
Nice.
It'll look fantastic. You did a wonderful job.
I'll have some for you next week.
Yeah. Like,
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we got $50 for that one. It was good.
Nice.
Now, the impetus for this conversation this evening was you said something that made absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah, like impetus.
Okay.
What is impetus?
Highlighting the question. What do you mean our language is failing us?
That's where you can't get your penis hard, you know?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sean takes those pills for that.
Yeah, I think the tweet was about language failing. I can't remember the exact tweet, but the fact that this is the Meme Factory is actually kind of perfect. So essentially part of my philosophy is like the world that we're descending into is a product of like nobody can actually speak truth anymore, which is kind of funny. And that's one of the things that makes memes so powerful is that they can actually portray truth that like can't be said succinctly or in ways that are easily understandable in a way that a meme actually can. But like a great example is like, the kind of bullshit that comes from the Fed about like, oh, like inflation is temporary. Like we can't help it. And, it's going to go down eventually, but it never does. And it's really kind of this product that's happened as a breakdown, I think it really all initiated at the end of World War II, just because of how powerful statism was and the amount of violence that they implemented after that. And essentially, like, the idea of what legalism is shipwrecked itself on the catastrophe that was World War II. And afterward, we've just been kind of getting a series of various lies that we have to live through. And now it's starting to amp itself way, way up. And particularly with the internet and how it's throwing a wrench into the gears of everything, of that, it's becoming much harder to actually discern what is truth. And part of the reason is because we have so many different things coming at us, so many different people lying to us constantly, that now it's almost hard for us to even find a bearing point of it. And I think what inspired the tweet was in 2017, I got an opportunity to meet Neil Stephenson at a book signing. And he was like taking questions from the audience, and I got a chance to ask him a question. I was like, oh, like what really like scares you, like 10 years out into the future? You like wake up, like, what's the thing that you're like terrified of? And he was like, oh, that like we live in a post-truth future. And he was like, what I mean by this is that like there's no discernible way to actually tell what's true anymore, because there's just so much disinformation and misinformation that there's no way to get a bearing on it. And so we essentially move back into the Middle Ages, where we just have to take any authoritarian decree as being truth. But it's funny because at the time I was like, that seems a little far-fetched. Like, how would we ever get to a world like that? Well, lo and behold, like, here we fucking are. So
Didn't take that long.
Do you think that had something to do with so-called capitalism nowadays, NeoCapitalism, however you want to call it, becoming what it has become, like basically servicing emotions, like they don't want to offend nobody, so it has to do with that, or it's really something else?
That's a component of it. And even the word capitalism, like I think all of the isms, like capitalism, capitalism,
quotations,
anarchism, like we can't even find the roots of these words because they've been so thoroughly abused in so many different contexts. And then we like layer on top like wokeism, where like wokeism is this thing where, you know, we really, like you were saying, like we don't want to engage in making people feel bad in any way.
Exactly.
So like we would much rather contort words and lies in such a way that comfort. Yeah. And like even you know, like one I love is the idea of gun violence, and like how people get so up in arms about like people owning guns, they like kill other people, and this is like so horrible and wrong. And it's like, before we can even have this conversation, like, why don't we talk about brown people being bombed out of existence by fucking drones by a bunch of fat slobs that are sitting in an air-conditioned station in Arizona? Like, is that violence? You know, they're like, what do you mean? You know, and it's all of this manipulation that, in my opinion, what it comes down to is about having comforting lies over hard truths. And essentially, like, we've spent 20 years going down that road. So now we have an entire generation of people that are part of this woke culture that's so removed from any logical imperatives that it doesn't matter about that, because we're in a post-structuralist system where like we can just kind of make up whatever we want to be true and force it down everybody's throat in such a way that I think it was even like at the beginning of 2020, people were saying shit like 2 + 2 = 5 because like math is actually this like white supremacist thing that's like forced on people. And like, while there are tiny threads of truth in all these things, they're so contorted and misaligned and fucked up that like people are actually saying shit like 2 + 2 = 5 and here's why. Or that like in the long run, war actually makes us safer and is a form of peace. And it's like, this is all just so fucking bananas that, you know, when people try to talk about anything that's a promise or a truth, they can't even anchor themselves into it in any meaningful way. And it kind of fucks up everything.
So what is it about the language that's failing us that is leading to this situation where we can't have these easy, hard truths, and we're preferring? We can even come up with a lie that's a convenient lie versus a hard truth.
Before you answer that, I feel like I don't know if you can guys feel that too. Like they used to be when I was young, like I did something that I shouldn't have done, and like my father slapped me. Like I immediately understood that the thing I was about to do like was wrong. And there was like a moment that, okay, I understand about that thing, that thing is wrong, this is right. But now everything is treated like in a spectrum. Like there's not right and wrong. Like everything is like about opinions and like that multi-opinion thing, like getting it makes people crazy in the end, like that multiple of opinions everywhere. Like I don't know.
Yeah, well, it makes me think about like lately you hear this phrase like as long as they're not hurting anyone, it's okay. And it makes me wonder if that's actually not true, right? Like the phrase like as long as they're not hurting anyone, because what if someone is telling a lie and you don't think it's hurting anyone else, but it really is, you just don't see it, the effects of it right now. I think that's something too that I've been thinking about lately as, as we're talking about what's true and what's not true.
Well, I think it's all about like both these contortions of what's truth, and then there's like no accountability towards what's being said. And so like people can say shit that's false and not be held accountable. And then there's this chain reaction of I'm trying to think that like, there was a study done where essentially like they put a bunch of monkeys in a cage. They put bananas at the other end of the cage, and anytime one monkey would try to go get the bananas, they would punish that monkey, and they would teach the other monkeys to punish any monkeys that like tried to go get the bananas. And what they found out was eventually, like, as you would rotate out new generations of monkeys, eventually they would learn that, like, anybody who tries to get the banana, attack them. And they didn't have any reason for it. They actually stopped enforcing the punishment on the monkeys because they were now self-enforcing it. And so it eventually gets to a place where there's no humans trying to enforce anything. And these monkeys are literally starving to death in the cage. And any monkey that goes to try to get the bananas will be attacked violently by the other monkeys. And in my opinion, this is sort of generationally where we're at right now, where someone says something untrue, people try to correct it, they all get attacked at the same time. And people essentially learn like, if I'm going to speak truth to power about something here, I'm going to get attacked in a very vicious and hurtful way. And it's probably a lot better for me just to like let that lie move forward with itself. And all of this stuff starts to build up over time in such a way that like now we just exist in a world full of fucking lies, and it's so hard to even get a basis of truth that most people don't know what's going on. And again, and this is one of the reasons why Bitcoin is so important, because the first time we've had a monetary system that isn't just chock full of fucking lies and manipulations and contortions and half-truths. And not to say that you can't make those things go on with Bitcoin, but by having that final truth that is Bitcoin's time chain and being able to check it against stuff, I can be like, oh, check it out. Like, there really actually only is 21 million Bitcoins that can ever exist. I can check what the block height is and know the exact number of Bitcoins going on. And the irony is, because we're so deep in this world where language is failing and everybody fucking lies about everything and steals from everyone, and it's frankly nihilistic, that's one of the key reasons why Bitcoin is so powerful, is that just by maintaining that fundamental truth, it's able to become one of the most valuable objects in human existence just because of that reason alone.
No.
Do you think that has to do also with the English language, because it's overused everywhere?
Yeah, for sure.
Worldwide? Because like in Greek, like you can't like play around a meaning of a word, because like a word is like a part of like 2 or 3 more words that is rooted, like it's like mathematical. The word is like mathematical, so you cannot like say a word and mean it something else. It changes its meaning. It's more difficult.
Yeah, I think Greek is an excellent example, just because it has an immediate change of philological and etymological history that
exactly
matches up with it really well.
Yeah,
whereas English, specifically being the language of advanced capitalism and Americanism, as capitalism was developing into what it was, that we started to not only get all of these different words, but we also need to appreciate the development of language since the early 20th century, and how specifically the development of propaganda explicitly wanted to manipulate those words in such a way in order to get what it wants. Yeah. Which is, a product now that we're very far downstream of, where like advertising now isn't like, hey, like I have a log and like you need to make a fire, so like you should use this log because you can light it on fire and that's like a great thing. It's more of like all of these fucking lies that are rolled into such a way of like, how can we sell the absolute maximum number of these things to the most people possible, even if they don't need it? And to me, like, this has actually produced this extremely latent nihilism in culture today, where you have a lot of people that don't actually believe in truth or that there's anything really of meaning or value beyond just the rawness of that money and what that is. And it's extremely troubling, because now when individuals like politicians come out and make promises and stuff, nobody believes really anything they say. And even if they are caught directly in line, as excuses are made for them in such a way that it's always kind of okay. And I think it's really troubling, because like, if somebody takes a commitment or a promise or an oath to something, there is literally no function that exists in language today in any form to make that accountability function. And that's, again, one of the really important things about Bitcoin, is that in order for, essentially you got to put your money where your mouth is, literally within the transactional semantics that we could call Bitcoin's time chain.
It's interesting because lately I've been thinking about how money in itself is a language, like it's a means of communication, and you communicate the value or your time, your energy, and your work, and how much money that you receive. That's your energy, your life force. And then you're also communicating what you value certain products or services by how much of your energy and your time that you're willing to spend through your money on whatever you're spending it on. And it's interesting that in this last 100 years or so with the central bank in the United States, how money has been, it's also failed us, and mathematically it's failed us at the base layer. And it's interesting that it's kind of happening at the same time that as language is ramping up, in like there's no real truth at the base layer of language, that like the truth is really failing at the same time in money, and it's coinciding. And I wonder if that has something, like if the money failing has just kind of seeped into the language failing at the same time.
I think so, because one of the things that is, like, as you're saying at the bottom, like, there is this fundamental accounting error that like all central banking and fiat money has to engage in, that like it is a fundamental lie that is a violation of actual accounting principles. But we need all this manipulation and contortion and like bunk reasoning in order to make it work. And when you consider like, this truly is what we call value in the world. Money is the object that we value and utilize to purchase all of the services and things that we need in order to, make life operable. But the fact is that a very small group of extremely wealthy individuals get to make the decision of how that money is created, distributed, and changed. Like that fucks with people's lives in a very direct way. Like what do you tell the Russian people who today, like they literally, anybody who had a savings account lost half of its purchasing power in the matter of a day? Like, how can you come to reasoning and say like, yeah, like there is truth, there is value, there is reason to these things, when you can be violated in such a core methodology immediately? I think it creates a very deep nihilism, particularly when people have been told, oh, like money in the bank, it's safe and sound, and like it turns out it's all just a bullshit lie. And it's very disturbing, because I think for a lot of people it's like it's an extreme black pill that they take, where they go, well, like what's even the fucking point? Like if I can save money and people can just steal it from me. And yeah, it's deeply disturbing. And frankly, this is the reason that I think Bitcoin's messianic. It's because of the way that it opens humanity up to a path that was absolutely inaccessible before. And it's only through this non-state money that, through essentially the dictatorship of Satoshi and his declaration that there will be only 21 million no matter what, and the way that he steadfastly refused to ever spend a single coin there, it delivers humanity over to a new possibility that was absolutely unachievable and impossible before the production of that. And furthermore, as we've seen with every single other shitcoin that's came into production, nobody has the actual willpower or capacity to resist the ability of essentially having the Midas touch to create money out of fiction, which is, essentially Ethereum's problem, along with pretty much every other shitcoin.
All right, so we have a lie at the base layer of money. The lie being that you're creating value from nothing, no real hard work. And either that lie is seeping into language, or language is seeping into that monetary structure, or maybe it's some type of synergistic relationship. And then you talked about Bitcoin being a messianic piece that can deliver humanity from that lie. And does that have something to do with in one of your works you talked about cryptography, trying to reduce everything down to a binary yes or no, and then cryptography expressing itself that way in money through Bitcoin as kind of like the hyper innovation, the hyper technology, or I forget the word used for it. Language is failing me at the moment.
Yeah, I think I called it a hyper language. And essentially because what Bitcoin's time chain fundamentally is, and each block that's added to it, you could look at every single TXID as essentially being like its own statement that's like in this gigantic lexicon of like words that the chain can always refer back to. And so this creates a panoptic view to where essentially language is now bonded to be able to immediately see and recognize, is this transaction true? Can I trace it all the way back through the chain of history to its original Coinbase transaction and where it was produced, and all of the successful true chains that go with that? Or is it false and there's something that's been violated here? And it turns out that cryptography is the only thing that we can use to build that language, because it's the only thing that was produced as a portion of war, and being able to have a communication under duress in such a way to be able to tell truth. And it's extremely important because, as we've seen, without something like that in the world, essentially we get central banking, fiat money, the production of all of these nihilistic lies that have us conclude at this form of totalitarianism where, you'll own nothing and be happy because that's how we've decided the setup is going to be and how you're going to live. And if you don't like it, you'll either be declared an enemy and destroyed, or, any number of other things will happen to, abuse you, which is what we saw over the last 2 years with, the bullshit that we saw go on.
So Bitcoin becomes a forcing function for the truth, and then how does that play out?
Well, I think this is one of the reasons why it's messianic, because I think as states come to the terms with the fact that they can't control Bitcoin, they're going to flip out, and that's going to cause for essentially an existential crisis between states and non-state actors who hold Bitcoin. And while I'm very open to the idea that maybe they integrate it directly into state treasuries, maybe people, like what we've seen in El Salvador is very reassuring. But as we all know, El Salvador doesn't run or maintain the global monetary order. And as we're seeing the global monetary order start to cascade and fail, more and more people are going to ask themselves, how can I protect my money? How can I know that it's not going to get inflated away? How do I know that they're not going to be able to attack it or steal it or do other things? And I think that with Bitcoin and the chain, that we can see that it's always maintained its ability to, maintain its 21 million units, that each block produces the number of coins that are promised, that each transaction goes through and isn't censored. It's going to become more and more important just in that censorship resistant, just in the way that the actual blocks get produced, the way that the mining network works. And this all doesn't even include the fact that it's utilizing energy at the very bottom of it in order to create this new sort of global market that anybody can participate within, so long as they have some amount of energy that they can commit towards mining in the network.
Well, speaking of energy, you can commit to mining in the network. What are your plans for that sea power, that West Coast sea power? How are you going to tap it?
West Coast. I have a lot of great ideas, but my truth is like I'm kind of lazy and slow, and I think that the best that I'm going to do is probably just get my little farm up and running and producing. Maybe I'll get some solar power and other stuff going, but I'm just really excited to see how the entire global energy industry is going to transform around Bitcoin, and understanding that now we can access all of this energy that was once wasted and not harnessed. And like one of the things that excites me the most is the way that people do solar power right now is essentially they're grid tied, and you sell back however much solar power that whatever extra solar power you have, you sell back to the grid at some absolute ass fuck price. And essentially, with people being able to mine Bitcoin utilizing their solar directly, there's now a subjective choice that they get to have of, do I sell money back to the grid, or do I mine Bitcoin for myself and hold it? And to me, introducing all of these new market mechanisms into being able to play around with how Bitcoin mining is done is really, really important. And this is going to help create redundancy throughout the network, and is going to allow for us to start ramping up our global energy supply. And for me, the ultimate long-term hope is that people are going to find the idea of doing nuclear decommission in order to access those nuclear materials to make nuclear power plants that they can bring online to add more power into not just the Bitcoin network, but the global energy network, and the energy that we're going to need not only to be successful civilization, but to get ourselves into space and be able to have enough energy and power to do that. In my opinion, this is the only way that we're actually going to be able to create that path through true market mechanisms and not just state force.
So decentralized energy pooling, Bitcoiners creating a bunch of value into the future, decommissioning nuclear missiles to do this. I like that future. How do I get the nation states to agree to start taking the nukes apart?
Write to your local government. Senator.
Exactly. Petition your local town council to open up nuclear processing for you.
Send them some
truth be told is, what was that? We're going to microdose shrooms. I'm down.
Yeah, send them some shrooms in that letter, too.
I think truth be told, the way it's going to happen is just market. It's just going to be market forces producing itself, and like, more than anything in the last week, we've seen how extremely vulnerable the monetary network is, and how all of these assets can like literally just be a keystroke away from being deleted, and who owns it, and what, and how. And I think it's going to prove more and more that the actual functions that Bitcoin has of not just producing energy, but like having this censorship resistant time chain. Like, one of the things that excites me the most that I think we're going to see a new production of with the Lightning Network is something similar to colored coins for asset ownership in various ways, in order to make sure that, like, hey, the ownership of my house, instead of it being reliant on some government to say, yeah, it turns out that he owns the deed of that, it's going to turn out that we're going to need to utilize Bitcoin's time chain in such a way to ensure that that deed can't ever be taken from me except through a voluntary process where I expose my private key and saying, yeah, I don't have the deed to this house anymore. And frankly, I also think that this is how we start to get a much more higher frequency and latency of international trade, because no longer are we reliant upon nation states in order to maintain the social contract, but we can do it ourselves. And it turns out that we don't need to have, and I'm sorry if your sponsors are going to be upset about this, but it turns out that we don't actually need to use violence in order to accomplish that we can do it utilizing this, in my opinion, what Bitcoin is doing is it's the production of the first new digital social contract that it utilizes energy in the place of violence, which in a lot of ways you can actually say that violence and energy have very deep corollaries and on a philosophical level.
So you're saying we're going to have to expose private keys to not produce, but to prove ownership of something. So in this future, how many times a year am I going to have to expose myself?
Well, look, I don't really, I don't want to comment on what you want to do personally, because it sounds like you might be into that a bit.
With those glasses, yeah. With those glasses?
Yes.
What's wrong with my glasses?
Yeah. Okay, nothing.
Shave the beard and just keep the stash, Greg.
Just the stash? I look like my dad if I just keep the stash. I gotta save that for later. No, these are like fills.
Too.
Yeah.
Like
fills.
They're great.
You got those from Point Nicholas?
But
I got them at N-Hole TS is where I got them.
Yeah. Nice.
But to answer your question, I think what ends up happening is that the pretty much ownership of everything goes onto Bitcoin's time chain, because it's the only thing that's going to have the ability to be censorship resistant in a meaningful way. And I think what we've seen after this week, it turns out that that's a really meaningful and important thing, because pretty much at any point in time, you can find yourself in a class of people that are labeled an enemy of the state, and they can strip you of whatever property ownership that you have. And like, in my opinion, what's going on right now, like, this is fucking terrifying. Like, literally, if you're a Russian person, you can be stripped of whatever stuff that you own right now, you know. And then they're like, oh, great, well, you know, we'll just all sail our yachts to the Maldives, which is an independent sovereign state, and, you know, they're not going to get us there. Turns out, no, we don't give a shit about international law anymore, and we're just going to seize your property wherever the fuck we can get our hands on. And that's really scary, because that is the disposal of the fundamental social contract, you know? Like, the reason that we allow for ourselves to give up a meaningful amount of sovereignty to the state is that they're supposed to be able to maintain these most basic of social contracts, which is the freedom to own shit and not have it willy-nilly stolen from you. But it turns out that, you know, fuck due process and jurisprudence when we can just steal shit from people that we don't like. And it's terrifying.
Yeah, it makes me think, you know, what's going to make you just your average citizen living in the West or the United States think, like, because even after what happened in Canada and what's happening in Russia to just regular citizens right now, most people still don't think twice about keeping their money in a bank. They have no idea that their money is an IOU in the bank, that their bank account can be shut off at a moment's notice. And they think it'll just never happen to them. Just kind of like with the feeling of inflation, they think, oh, well, you know, Argentine-like inflation could never happen here in the United States, or what's going on in Russia, that can never happen here in the United States. Like, how do you open, or how do we open the minds of people up to recognize that if it can happen in Canada or in Russia, or it can happen anywhere, because it is happening in certain places in the world, and it can happen to any one of us.
I mean, in all honesty, the sad truth is I don't think you can convince people of that, because, you know, like, let's flash back to Berlin, 1936. You know, we go to our Jew friends and we go, hey, like, you guys should really get the fuck out of here. Like, they're gonna kill all you guys pretty soon. And they're gonna be, no, yeah. Like, they wouldn't do that. Like, what's even the point of that? That doesn't make any sense. And like, to me, this is the most important part, is like, look, like, it has nothing to do with making sense. And like, that's one of the most important things, is that, like, people do evil shit, not because it makes sense, but because they're just doing what they're told. And when they start to think about, oh, is this thing evil? They go, whoa, 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 hang on. No. We no need to think about that. We're just going to do what we're told, follow the rules. That's the right thing to do. You're like, well, hang on. Aren't you just shipping a bunch of Jews off to where they're all going to fucking die? He goes, look, man, like, I'm just doing my job, okay? Like, I don't know where they're going. And even if they are all going to get burned alive after this, I don't see how I'm responsible. Like, this is how a lot of people think. Like, Jerome Powell isn't, like, at home, like, and stopping being like, whoa, wait, is me just, like, printing out money for the government and military? Like, is this evil? No, like, the motherfucker's never thought about it in his life.
Are we the bad guys?
Are we the baddies?
Are we the baddies?
You know, I'm like, a great example for me is, like, when we're at Coinbase, we used to have these really great and interesting conversations where, like, the founders of startups would come in and, like, talk about their startup. And there was the founder of an AI startup who came in, Elon Musk had backed him, and he was kind of talking about his product. And anyways, my team was full of all kind of paranoid anarchists and stuff. And so one of the guys was like, hey, like, don't you think it's problematic that, like, maybe you're working on stuff that, like, you don't fully understand, and maybe it could get out of control, and, like, maybe this thing could go rogue and, like, you know, kill all humanity? And I shit you not, he was like, you know, I've like never really thought about that. And that's when I was like, oh shit, like, this is really alarming. And honest to God, like, I think the vast majority of people that are involved with the Fed and the government in various levels, at no point in time does it ever occur to them to say, hey, are we the baddies?
No.
You know, like, that, it can't be welcomed, because that introduces way too much problems in terms of the cognitive dissonance that they already maintain. And if they have to look at that hard, that brings up some really alarming stuff that a lot of people don't want to deal with. You know, and in the conversations,
compartmentalization. What's the word? God damn it.
Compartmentalization.
Yeah,
That is it.
Yeah.
Noted.
And let me check that.
How come you don't work at Coinbase anymore?
Like, because a number of reasons, but essentially when they decided to go full shitcoin, I was like, I'm out. I mean, like, that thing was a clusterfuck from top to bottom to the start. Not to say I worked with very smart people. I appreciated the experience, but when it became pretty clear that we were making that pivot, I was out. And not just because, like, I was, I think we all go through our shitcoin arc and are curious about it at times. But for me, the biggest part of the pivot was I was just uninterested in how much of an absolute clusterfuck and a disservice to all of our customers it was going to be, because of my entire experience at Coinbase was trying to advocate for our customers and just getting fucked every single time that I tried to do that. And then eventually at the end, like, I was dealing exclusively pretty much with these $1 million bugs and issues that, it was really painful that I'd go to the team and be like, all right, you guys got to correct this one thing. That's all I need from engineering. And they're like, yeah, but, none of our KPIs are aligned with that. So sorry, we just won't fix it.
How early days are we talking? Are we talking about the days that you guys used to, like, mine Bitcoin inside the office? And, like, how early days were you there?
I mean, I was always part of the remote team. So I joined in late 2013 as a contractor. They kept me on a contract for 18 months illegally at that. Like, I had my first son and they didn't even give me any time off to, be with my kid and my wife after they were fucking born. And then finally they were like, oh, maybe we shouldn't, like, absolutely fuck support. So they brought us in as employees, I think in, like, early 2015 or something.
Okay, another
like
question. Don't if you don't have to answer it, don't do it. Just like, but I am curious. 2016, 2017, flash crash of ETH from, like, a couple of dollars, $96, I think, to cents. Like, was that a bug or no?
Oh, the fat finger.
Cough twice.
It was a fat finger.
Come on, man! It was a fat finger.
Use cryptography.
It was a
from inside the office.
I hope I can say. As far as I know, it was a client that it was a client who was part of the ICO, had a huge bag, and he didn't understand what he was doing, and came in and fat fingered on the market, liquidated the entire fucking market that we had.
Oh,
and
I remember.
Despite the fact that this shit had happened before, we didn't have any. I'm trying to think of what the word is.
Plunge protection team.
Like, essentially, yeah, we didn't have essentially a kill switch on the market if it dropped more than, like, 20% or something. And I'm pretty sure after that they were like, oh yeah, like, turns out we should totally do that.
Is that what happens now?
The lost a massive amount of money during it.
Is that why Coinbase goes down now when there's big moves?
No, it's because the product is so complicated and that there's so many dependencies that nobody knows what the fuck is going on. So then one thing goes down and drags the entirety of the fucking exchange down. Again, as far as I understand it.
I remember.
I haven't been there since October of 2017, so who really knows what's going on? But
yeah,
it's a bummer that the company decided that they were going to pivot to shitcoining, and that led the entire market into all this insane bullshit. Not to say that, like, maybe there could be value here, but, like, I'm not fucking interested in any of that. I'm interested in freeing people from the tyranny that is fiat money.
True. If we can go back a little bit to the Bitcoin and energy narratives, it's not like a narrative, it's like becoming a reality now, like this hybrid thing growing between Bitcoin and energy companies, treating it like a way to stabilize the network and so on. Like, but do you think, like, in the future where we're near hyper Bitcoinization, or we haven't reached it, but we're near, I guess, like that symbiotic relationship can become parasitic, like Bitcoin becomes so valuable that we're gonna be mining Bitcoin instead of, like, running our fridges or something like that? Like, can we get there?
I'm of the opinion that like the market mechanisms are going to play out just as they need to, so like if people are choosing to like, if they're subjectively choosing to like mine Bitcoin instead of like run their refrigerator, maybe it's because like they can buy all their food at the market, and it turns out the amount of energy that they're spending from their refrigerator doesn't equate to the amount they want to use for that. Like I feel very confident that the actual market mechanisms at play will create for a virtuous cycle where, we're both going to get greater energy production. We're going to get more energy dependency. That's going to give us more base load, which is going to allow for us to go to more renewables. And Fred Thiel has a really great thing that he states about kind of how he sees this virtuous cycle playing out with energy. And I think it's really, really important and very similar to how almost every single narrative in Bitcoin starts, which again is kind of part of the funny thing of how language is so fucked up, is almost every single thing that's brought up as like a problem with Bitcoin, it turns out that like it's beneficial to Bitcoin, and energy's one of them. Because everybody's like, well, Bitcoin's wasting energy, but it turns out that it's actually using stranded energy and energy that wasn't being utilized correctly before. And that, for example, the largest hydroelectric dam in the United States, which was in upstate New York, they were going to shut down because they weren't profitable. And it turned out that they could actually integrate Bitcoin mining in such a way that they became profitable and that they didn't have to shut it down. Like that's a really important development. And in my mind, this is part of the engagement of creative destruction that Bitcoin does, is that like, it doesn't just want to make energy markets better. Like it fundamentally wants to destroy how we understand energy markets and recreate them in a new image where Bitcoin is a central component of how energy companies understand the production of energy. So I feel very confident that moving into the future, that this is going to be a positive sum development for everyone. But I'm just some crazy guy on the internet.
Yeah, I think the best thing,
cares what I really say.
one of the best things that happened, or coolest things, was I think it was like the WEF predicted in like 2017 that by the end of 2020, Bitcoin would use more energy than the world uses, or that the world used back in 2017. And then like Bitcoin's using less than 0.1% of the energy that the world produces currently, And so it's like, it's funny to watch those predictions, how they just played out so wrong. And Bitcoiners were saying it the whole time. And then when they do play out wrong, then they just go, oh, well, who cares? And it's still using too much energy, and they don't actually look into like the roots of the issue or the roots of what's actually happening.
We actually also dropped 1% in hash rate today. We dropped 1% in hash rate today. So I just want to say, my bad. I tripped in a cable. So sorry, guys. By tomorrow, it's going to be up again. Okay. So don't worry.
All right.
Good.
Nice. I'm happy to hear that. But I mean, like, it's interesting that you bring up that WF point, because, like, to me, this again is part of the way that language is failing, is that people have invested into these authoritarian institutions that tell them things that are obvious lies, and they get to change their truth and what they tell is the truth continually, and people keep taking them at face value. And to me, like, one of the greatest signals, like Bitcoin price go ups is great, but I think Bitcoiners are way more valuable because of the amount of signal that they put out there, and that like these are people that are constantly trying to be in pursuit of the truth in a very rigorous way. And I really appreciate what they bring to the table, because repeatedly there have been places that I thought I had differences of opinion, that because these people were shouting at the top of their lungs to pay attention, I looked deeper into it and I was like, you know what? They're pretty right about this, and that's a very, very powerful mechanism. And in other podcasts, like I do with John Vallis and stuff, we reflect a lot on how and why is it that interacting with Bitcoin influences us in this way that we want to pursue truth more deeply. And I think a very large reason is because getting to interact with something that's not lying to us and is telling us the truth has us be able to anchor ourselves back to something and go, oh, wait, like truth does have meaning in this world. And it is something that we can explore, and we can allow for ourselves to use that as a guiding light, despite all the fucking lies and bullshit that we're told almost constantly.
What are some of the big lies right now?
The government cares about you.
Your face.
My face?
You know, that like this war in Ukraine is good. Like all war is fucking bad.
Yeah.
You know,
Sucks.
that people with 2 X chromosomes can be men, and that somebody with an X and a Y chromosome can be a woman. You know, and like, and again, and like, and I want to be very clear, like that isn't to engage in hateful rhetoric or to say that these people who identify in different ways shouldn't be able to identify that and be safe and celebrated in society for who they are. It's to point out that when we start augmenting language in this way to just say shit that isn't true, there's very real fucking consequences that come out from it. You know, in the same way that the Fed tells us all the fucking lies that they do. Oh, inflation's temporary. Well, how the fuck are you going to make it temporary when you guys just quadrupled the money supply in an extremely short window? You know, and like, so, you know, I'd say the big lies are pretty much anything you're going to get from mainstream media, because I sincerely believe they don't see that they have any obligation towards the truth anymore, and that it is all part of an agenda of what they need to spin. And it's not because they're evil people out there who are like, haha, like, how are we going to lie to people today? I just don't think they even fucking think about it. Like, I don't even think they try to think about it. I think they go, those are the words on the teleprompter, and that's what I'm going to pitch today.
Yeah, you have like someone like Jay Powell, right? Who just he just addressed the Congress yesterday for the semi-annual monetary policy thing that they do with the Federal Reserve. And, you know, and in one instance, he's saying that it's like really hard for them to predict how like high inflation is going to go with the CPI, which, you know, last year they were saying that inflation was transitory, that it wasn't going to go as high. And now it's up way higher than they wanted it to be, which most Bitcoiners were calling that out from, you know, we were calling that out a long time ago. And then, so he says it's, you know, it's really hard to predict it. It's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen. And then later on, then he goes, but, you know, we're confident that we're working on inflation and it's going to go down. It's like, but you just said that it was almost impossible to predict what's going to happen with inflation. So it's like, it's like, well, which one is it? You know, you can't tell us both things. And so it's just interesting.
Well, and what's going to happen to Jerome for the fact that he made this error that is now punishing hundreds of millions of Americans?
He gets another term. He gets another term as chairman of the Fed is what happens.
Exactly. Well, and so like, not only is there not even accountability, but the accountability is so misaligned that it turns out truth isn't your guiding light at all. Like, you actually need to be a liar and a sycophant in this world if you want to be successful. And again, this is one of the major problems, is that like, if you're somebody that's actually truth oriented, you're not valuable in any of these places, whether it's in journalism or in politics or in government or in corporations. It's about, do you get online and on board with whatever the authoritarian decree is? Yeah. And it's deeply alarming because we don't even find any form of truth to anchor ourselves to, which we can all descend into.
If you're not saying what's in the Overton window because you're searching for truth, you have a high likelihood of being called a conspiracy theorist just because you're searching for truth. Not necessarily that you actually are saying one thing or you're implying one thing. If you're asking questions that are outside of the Overton window, then you have a very high likelihood of being labeled as a conspiracy theorist in today's world.
Absolutely. And one of the problems is that we're so deep into this that anybody that would question things, like, they were extricated, decades ago. And so everybody that's playing the game now knows that this is how the game is played, is that there are hard truths that nobody can ever state, because if they do, they'll get kicked out. And like, look at how COVID played out. And simply people saying, hey, are these vaccines safe? They were fucking canceled. They had their careers destroyed. And to be very clear, they weren't saying these are dangerous. They were asking, are they safe? And like, this is very fucking disturbing to think that we had a government just sponsor a program and push all this stuff out. And when anybody asked any questions about it, they got fucking canceled. And not only did they get canceled, but people who said, not only am I not going to question you, but I'm going to promote this stuff openly and call it science when it's anything but science, they were celebrated. And where are we at today? well, it turns out they admit that maybe this did actually leak from a lab, and maybe the vaccines are more harmful than we thought, and maybe all the shit that people were being labeled as conspiracy theorists in the beginning, the conspiracy theorists haven't been recovered, the conspiracy theorists, and meanwhile, all the people that push this shit, they're not being held accountable in any way. And again, this is why Bitcoin's so important, is because it has accountability. That's why being able to, just be able to run a command that allows for us to see what the supply is so important, is because we have a viewpoint into its accountability, unlike anything else in this world.
And I think also, I think what makes Bitcoin truthful too is the fact that at the base layer, it can't be censored. And so when, if you think about language now, right, if anyone tried to question the narrative, and if they were actually honest questions, they were censored. And so how can you have truth if you can only say one thing, if you can't bring in another viewpoint, which normally in most topics there's not just two different viewpoints, which is what's thought about today, is that there's two viewpoints, but there's a lot of different viewpoints. And so if you try to bring in a different viewpoint, you were censored. And so how can truth exist in a language where you're censored for searching for the truth? I think that's what's great about Bitcoin, is that you can't censor Bitcoin. And that's another reason why it leads to the truth.
Yeah, and as we were talking at the beginning about 1984, it's really important that George Orwell points out that the entire point of the new language of Newspeak in 1984, it wasn't just to censor people. It was to make the ability to question fundamentally impossible, that you couldn't even assemble the forms of thought to be able to make those questions. Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing this come up continually, right now there's just all the dialogue about how evil Russia is and how Putin's a bad guy and how we have to do everything to stop him. And there's absolutely no fucking dialogue of, well, hey guys, was it the fact that we violated the original protocols of the treaty of expanding NATO when we said we wouldn't? Was that part of a problem? And if you even try to produce these things, they again, it's like, we better cancel this guy. He's saying shit that we don't like. Mm-hmm. And what I think is really interesting is this goes back 500 years, all the way back to original political theory, where Thomas Hobbes says, look, what the power of the sovereign equates to is it's about authority over truth. Truth has nothing to do with this. It has to do with the authoritarian decree of the sovereign and what he says that is what is legitimate. Whereas Bitcoin inverts that same sovereign function, where it says, actually, we're going to say legitimacy is truth first over those sort of authoritarian decrees. And in this world, that almost inverts everything in an extremely powerful way, which is why, in my opinion, things are so contentious at this point, and why Bitcoiners seem to be the only class of people that are consistently speaking truth.
And it's something that you just haven't ever seen before. It's never existed in the world before. I think that's why it's so hard for people to understand what Bitcoin is, because when you try to explain it, you can't relate it to anything else that's ever existed. And I think and so then they try to relate it to a stock, and it's like, this is totally different than some stock, because they watch the price go up and down in dollar terms or whatever their government currency is. And I think because it's so different than anything else that we've ever seen before, and how it really liberates the person. And we've never had that. You've always had some type of government or some type of authoritarianism over the individual. And this is totally just flipping that whole idea that we've had since the beginning of time, since humans have existed, which is just crazy to think about.
Yeah, and for me, the reflections on that are, what has me believe it truly is messianic, because this is an opening for humanity that's never happened before. It's doing it non-violently. It's organizing people in a peaceful methodology, and it allows for us to extricate ourselves from all of this insane fucked up stuff. And it's really important to me that people understand, this isn't like anything we've encountered before. And furthermore, all these comparisons always fail. And one of the reasons it fails is because most of us not only have no idea what money is, but we don't understand value or wealth, or the differences between these things, how they're produced, why they function that way. And so, like, as people start to try to question things and they come up against it, it's really hard. And the only way that you can actually really figure it out is through deep methodological research that essentially is what we call the rabbit hole, and going down it and allowing for yourself to have your viewpoints change, because you're starting to integrate all of these new facts and information that you never knew before and never thought you needed to know.
Exactly. This is, I mean, we could go on for hours. I'm not sure if
RD's got a question to ask.
Oh no, you're on fire.
Boom.
All right, so Eric, you've been very generous with your time. We're coming up on the hour, and I don't want to go too far along before we get to RD's question, which is usually the most important of the night. Whenever you're ready, man.
Oh my God. Here we go.
Yeah, I've actually got another question I wanted to ask Eric, if that's all right. First,
Gasp.
Wizard of Oz in the chat is new to Bitcoin, like literally today, just started going down the rabbit hole.
Oh wow!
And like, what I just want to like ask Eric, what would you say to someone who's literally just about to go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole?
Run.
You know,
Run.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
You know, which world do you want? Do you want the one that you've been living in, or do you want the one that we seem to be talking about? Yeah, red pill, blue pill. And look, either, you know, you can drop out of that chat, return to your normal life, and that's what it'll be. Or you can take the orange pill and follow each one of these questions as far as you can, and follow each one of the new questions as far as you can, and see what it produces. And to be clear, you know, like, we're not offering anything other than the truth, you know, and you can choose for yourself. So, you know, that's what I'd say.
Even truth about you, yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truth about yourself.
Hard truths.
Yeah, you know, and I think that component of the truth about yourself is the most important, because, like, what if not only you can make a little bit of money off of Bitcoin, but what if you can make more money than you ever thought you could off of Bitcoin? What if Bitcoin can protect your savings and your wealth in a way that you never even imagined was possible? Like, what if everything that you know about money in the world is pretty far from the truth? And what if the truth can actually produce something for you that is much, much more powerful than you believe it could be? And to me, like, this is one of the ontological things about Bitcoin that's so important, is that through us exploring all of these questions and asking them, we learn new things about who we are, because of the way that we have to reflect on those and consider them.
It's ironic, like, as long as you're being in the rabbit hole, like, your purchasing power, like, rises, and you make a little bit of money, as we say. But, like, as you go, you figure out more and more that, oh, I need less and less of that thing. Like, I don't need that much. It's like, so that duality, it's weird, man.
I liked your second answer better than your first answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I wasn't talking to you, Eric. RD, second question. Hit us.
Okay, Eric. Thanks for coming on, man. I am a bit of a fanboy when it comes to Erik Cason's cypherpunk.
Thank you. I always appreciate your retweets and comments. It's great. So thank you for saying that.
So this is the important question. If the meme factory did exist, and we all know it doesn't, who would you like, who would you retweet, and who would you mute?
You know, because it's memetic, like, I have zero attention whatsoever to the producers of the memes, because, you know, because it's a meme, it self-perpetuates itself. You know, with that being said, you guys all produce fantastic meme content, and I actually think, in the way that language is failing, to me, like, memes are the
The Band-Aid.
It's like the poetry of the internet, you know, like it's these profound statements that are made utilizing this method and mode that can't communicate things otherwise. And I think it's really beautiful and brilliant and funny. So yeah, I unfortunately I can't answer your question just because to me the art itself speaks so loudly that the artist is lost in its production, you know, and that that's actually a really important thing about the production of Bitcoin as well. With, you know, who is Satoshi Nakamoto? Well, he's the person who made Bitcoin, and that's the only thing we know about him, and the only importance that it has is for the truth that is Bitcoin. In the same way that a meme producer, if they deliver their truth so meaningfully, it perpetuates itself out in a viral methodology.
I'm humble enough to take this as a win, and thank you.
All right, and Eric, is there anything while you have the opportunity to ask anybody in the meme factory here? Do you have any questions for any of us?
Yeah, like what's your guys' goal with the show? And like, where do you guys want to see? Is it just to have fun? Is it just to hang out? Is it to educate Bitcoiners? Like, what would you like to see the meme factory doing in 2023?
For my part, I'm selfish. I invite people on that I feel like talking to. This is the way I can get people that I'm interested in talking to come on, right, and have a conversation with me that otherwise that they wouldn't.
Good
Pretty
question.
good answer.
Maybe we'll get off test streams.
No.
2023, we're no more test streams. They're all real streams in 2023.
I don't know.
How about you, son? Why do we do this?
I don't know, because we're just we hang out and we talk every day in the chat that doesn't exist, and then we're like, hey, why don't we bring someone cool who wants to talk about Bitcoin? And then we just do it together, and it's fun. And we have, as I look at it, like we have some of the smartest people in the world that we just constantly are talking to. It's awesome.
So yeah, personally, I would say we started it like that because we used to do like a voice call in Telegram, and we just joke around, and that's how it started. Basically, we basically said like, why don't we stream this? Like, it's funny. It's funny. We make each other laugh. I think the plebs would like it. So we started like that, but when it's public, I always think of the noobs. Whatever I do, like the memes, the tweets, whatever I do, I think of the newbies. So it has become a little bit educational, I guess. So it's good. It's both.
Yeah, I think that's also definitely something too, is like just the more signal we can put out in the world, the better, especially on platforms like YouTube and whatever, any podcast, just things where people can go deep. Like this is a good podcast for people who are listening, who like know a little bit about Bitcoin and they want to go deeper, because I think a lot of times we do go pretty deep, and sometimes we don't even mention Bitcoin for a long time, and we kind of bring it back. And so,
we're also different from other. I think we're also different from the other podcasts. Like you can see guys like Sailor and Jack Mallers, and I don't know, so-called big names like relax and like share something that they wouldn't share otherwise. I think that's the main point. I don't know if
the Sailor ad read I thought was fucking hysterical. So I appreciate that you guys are doing that. You know,
Craig is a master.
I think it's kind of interesting is, you know, isn't it wild that you get to do something that you think is fun and funny and that you enjoy, but more importantly, other people get to witness that and they get value out of it, value that you didn't even know you were telegraphing to them. And maybe because of what you guys have produced here, you know, that maybe somebody from Ukraine actually learned about Bitcoin and was exposed to it from your show well before all this shit happened, and they were able to actually get out in a meaningful way.
Fucking awesome. Yeah,
I would hope so.
You know, and I think it's really weird and interesting that somehow through us pursuing this as well, not only does it speak us to produce value out into the world in a meaningful way, but the way that that telegraphs to other people and that it gives value to them. And that, again, with this pursuit of truth, the way that that has us find something of greater value to us than just, you know, the monetary means. It's pretty fascinating.
All right,
Here.
I think we're still waiting on an answer out of RD though. Why do you do it, RD? Why do you sit here on mute?
God damn it.
We're a cop out here. It's pretty much a combination of what everyone's just said. Yeah, it's like, just like kind of like the same reason for doing the memes, basically. It's like to try and contribute something of value, something that might help someone somewhere along the way, basically. So, yeah.
And I'd point out that these are pretty noble causes, and like my truth is that, again, this is why it's messianic. It's because of the way it has this very personal affect of reasoning in a way that we would have maybe never discovered or explored before Bitcoin, in a way that's extremely important to us as individuals and how it actually changes the way that we interact with the world. And I think it's a really beautiful and profound thing for us to be able to, through memes and all the different ways, to actually communicate and contribute in these ways, because at the end of the day, what we're doing is a noble pursuit. We're telling people, look, there is a money out here in the world that can't be debased, inflated, stolen, and confiscated, and that you can have that to meaningfully protect yourself. And like how wonderful it is that we get to have this as part of our lives continually. So great job in producing the show, and keep putting your content out there. And whenever you have moments that maybe you question yourself, lean into that part of where you go, oh yeah, other people get value out of this in a really meaningful way that maybe I don't see. So I got to carry on with my mission.
All right. I like that.
Thank you. Yeah. That's good.
Thanks, Eric. And tell everybody in the chat and watching live or watching later where they can find you.
You can find my website. It's cryptosovereignty.org. Don't let the prefix of that title there mislead you. It's really about how, and the reason why it's called crypto sovereignty, not Bitcoin sovereignty, is cryptography at the end of the day is what allows us the ability to have sovereignty, and Bitcoin is the very first social contract that utilizes that function. So if you want to dive deep on some of the crazy shit that I write about, please feel free to read up on my website there. And I'm always open to comments on, you can find me on Twitter. It's just my name, Erik Cason. And DMs are open, so always feel free to throw out whatever interesting thoughts you have. I'm always open.
You can find that all in the show notes. And I almost forgot, Sean has an invitation for you.
Yes. Bitcoin 2024 halving. You're invited. We're doing a little meme factory party for the halving in 2024. We're always trying to, you were talking about 2023. We're just a year ahead of you. So you're invited, and bring whoever you want to bring. And it's going to be a blast. We don't know if we're doing it physically yet or online. So it just depends on how all these rules go down. With,
Maybe both.
Maybe both.
Yeah, man. Let's make it meat space. We got to do meat space.
I like that a lot better personally. So, but yes, definitely invited, and get ready for the halving in 2024 because it's going to be pretty crazy.
Blog? We know
the block height 840,000.
Okay.
All right.
Labra isn't here, so I got to do the.
I think I saw him in the chat. He's here. All right, everybody.
And are you guys going to be in Miami?
I will.
Great.
I'll try.
I'm in Europe. I won't be able to make it.
You gonna be there, Eric?
Me.
Eric. It's Eric.
Oh yeah. I'm over here on mine. So
are you gonna be there?
Like you were pointing to Sean. But yes, I am going to be there. So I look forward to meeting you in Meet Space.
Excellent. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next week.
Good night.